Okay, apparently we are live. So yeah, welcome to Finland as a user group tips and tricks session on 2022 edition. I'm not sure if this is anymore the extravaganza that we started, but yeah. First off, apologies for the title. It was the world was not back then what it is now, but anyway. Today, I'm gonna go into a little bit of detail on a story that unfolded a little while ago on a client, on a customer, and the customer is Mitsubishi Logistics Europe, where we are doing some greenfield, but also now lifting and shifting some brownfield stuff and doing that stuff as well. So at this moment in time, a shout out to Olli from Atostech, who has been with me in this journey to understand Windows containers and what this actually means to run IIS payloads in AKS. Needless to say, the information, as per usual, is gathered throughout the internet, and it's become evident that you need to dig it a little bit, and there's no consolidated place where you would find magic solution for all of your problems. So it takes a little bit of time and effort and trial and error, especially at least for me, as I haven't been developing any ASP.NET solutions at all at any given time. My touch point for C# has been to .NET Core, and it's that much easier to run in Linux environment and in containers that we kind of begin our journey with doing an RAT, or riskiest assumption test. We assume that we can run the old ASP.NET IIS payloads in a container, and that was the first thing that we kind of started to see that if it can be done in the first place. And essentially what we ended up doing is just setting up a Windows 219 server and a VM, and then using RDP to use that as a baseline to test things out. Unfortunately for this talk, I couldn't set up the RDP connection through the Mac remote desktop software. OBS doesn't want to show the source, so I cannot show exactly, but I try to be describe it as vividly as possible. But essentially, when scouring the internet about information that, okay, what kind of base image do we need, and how can we even make it run, quite quickly we came to realize that it is a very critical that you have the correct base image that matches the host system. With Linux, you can run essentially any Linux on top of Linux host in Docker, but with Windows containers, it's not the case. Essentially, we ended up running the host system being the Windows 2019 server as for the testing purposes, and then I installed the Windows Admin Center. With the Windows Admin Center, you have the containers extension, and I found a video in the internet, as a community video that showed that how can you craft essentially what it's doing in the accession. You can drop down select an existing IIS application, and to containerize that, it was an kind of like a tool that you can do the containerization semi-automatically. So what we ended up with that then was a good starting point, because we had a Dockerfile that we can then adjust to accordingly, and this is what we did. So we found out that, okay, this kind of base image you need, and then that what it needs to contain. And from there, we kind of started crafting then the actual container and how to build and run. So the base image that works with the server 2019, I think it's the core containers. I can put it. We can put it in the show notes later on, or the description that what was the actual image from Azure in the runtime that we use. But the base image is the Windows Server Core LTSC 2019 that we can build the stuff and that runs in the 2019 server. So then this I found from another source that there were a couple of packages or components that you'd want to remove because they either don't work or they have known issues. So this nugget I found somewhere in a blog post that okay, maybe you want to skip these specific components before building. And then essentially, of course, as per Docker, you just copy your solutions and all the packages that you need, restore the packages, and then we use MS-build to build the thing. And then for this runtime part, it's a little bit easier. You can just use the ASP.NET 4.8 from Microsoft as a runtime, and essentially just copy the application that was just built in the previous phase, and move it to the www root, and off you go with the runtime. So in order to achieve this, we need a couple of things. We are using, I will maybe show now the overall architecture to kind of like set the baseline a little bit here. So as we do greenfield, and now we lift and shifted stuff from legacy EES data center, we are using Argo workflows as a CI/CD as well as a generic thing that where we can configure many different kinds of workflows, not only CI/CD based workflows, as it is a very flexible configuration system that you can have a DAG type workflows, not only pipelines that go from one step to another, but to deviate and have a little bit more complex logic on the workflow side as well for future purposes. So then we have the Argo workflow there, and then Docker for Windows is not something that you can have in the first place. So though it was a little bit tricky on that side. So what we ended up doing then is that we have a Linux Docker client that connects to a Windows virtual machine cluster. That is the build cluster that is running Windows 2019 VMs. And then we connect to that using just a TCP socket. So the instructions are coming from the Linux host client, or the Linux client, Docker client, and then the host is Windows VM based. So, but eventually, then the build Docker image is saved to or uploaded to Azure Container Service as per usual. And then on the runtime side, we just have a Windows node pool, which is also, of course, 2019 Windows Server runtime. But then we are able to just configure the runtime with Argo and customize the templates that we have an AKS cluster with. Or actually, Terraform is handling that part. So we have a couple of node pools, one for Windows, and we can then have the correct annotations to target the Windows containers into the Windows node pool. So that was maybe the easiest part of this whole exercise, to have the dedicated Windows node pool for the Windows runtime. So that is kind of like the gist of the whole thing. The tricky parts were exactly to kind of get the baseline done, the base image, and then try to figure out that, okay, what other stuff is needed. And as IIS apparently, in my understanding, cannot load secrets dynamically from environment or any other place other than the configuration file, then that was one part that we needed to make a script that runs in the runtime when we load the container, that resolves the secrets from the key vault and makes the configuration file, and then restarts the IIS server essentially when the container starts. So that was kind of like the final piece in order to get everything working as per the architecture that we have. But then, how it's then showing, you show next this is then how it looks like in the Argo workflow side. So now here we have an API thing. This is not a Windows container, but they are very similar. That essentially we just have the DIG that, okay, we have a start build message that comes through to Teams and Slack, and then we have a build and push task that pulls the repo and builds the things and pushes to ACR and so forth, and then executes the end build message that, okay, we have everything in place, so the developers know that from Slack and Teams that what the status was for the containers. And then when it's actually then run on the CD side, this is now Argo CD. Now it seems that we are developing and making a new QA build. It's now currently now progressing. It was degraded, so we are making an update at the moment for the QA. So essentially this CD UI then gives you the access to what is exactly happening inside the AKS, which is a neat tool to look at logs and debug everything and seeing, and also doing rollbacks. So now there's a revision 17 that was just published. Now it's healthy. And we then have a one backup, so the revision 16 could be easily rolled back from this UI if something would happen, and we can look at all the logs in the pods and the pod status and stuff from this UI. So overall, well, this Argo is not necessarily related to this Windows container stuff, but as an overall tool to look at the AKS. I was also not very familiar with Argo when we got into this project, but it has been proven to be quite a good tool to manage an AKS cluster, and also the workflows are very, as I explained before, have proven to be really really powerful in that sense that what you can do with them. But on top of that, if we go a little bit past the Windows container stuff, then what we were also able to do and achieve with Argo and stuff, we are also making a native application. So we ended up doing a base image for building Android applications. So this way we get around as well with the Docker value promise that you builds on my machine or works on my machine goes away. So we have a container that we can control and upgrade the versions in a centralized way, and for each commit we build and get the results that way, and then we essentially have that base image being used in our React Native application, and then take some secrets from the key vault and dependencies, and we are using Lerna as our build tool now, as everything that we do now is in monorepo. That was coming from the customer that, yeah, the monorepo thing is a big deal, and we are using that. So also this was the first monorepo projects for me personally, and I think the whole team. So it can been a little bit of a cultural shift in the mindset that okay, how do we handle the things in the monorepo world, and we are actually looking to maybe change Lerna into something else. There has been now popping up cool matrices that compare the features and stuff, and we've learned that Lerna is not maybe the best thing out there at the moment. So maybe I think in the not so distant future we will most likely do a spike on testing other tools as well. On top of that, when after build, we have tests in browser stack that we can do from the build itself. So then browser stack will notify Slack into Slack that how the tests went and so forth. And then the same for and React application. But the thing is the same, that it's a good thing that we can have just when we have a monorepo, which we can, it's easy and very cheap to create libraries that are that have multiple purposes instead of, and also not having the hassle of always versioning and stuff. But of course, it's when it's not an artifact and it's not semantically versioned at any given time, in the sense that you publish an artifact that you can then use as a dependency, it creates this shift in thinking that okay, and that if we do development, that or for example the bug fixes and how do we handle those, but we are still contemplating about the best approaches on different kinds of versioning strategies and publishing strategies from that monorepo if we need to have a certain piece of code from a certain point in time in the library, instead of having always the latest code available for any given build. So there's definitely problem points there that we haven't yet come across, but for now we have been able to keep the trunk-based development going, and yeah, but I feel that might be going to change quite soon as well. But yeah, overall, this is something that we've now been working lately, and basically I think that if you kind of want to have a short takeaway from this short introduction to IIS in AKS, is that the Windows Admin Center might be a good way of starting at the container extension. You can go there and just use a drop down and figure out how the Windows Admin Center container extension is crafting the Dockerfile. So I at least I couldn't, at the time when we did this exercise, couldn't find a base image or the kind of the Dockerfile anywhere that with the keywords that I was trying to Google. And we kind of needed to have that in order to get forward with the thing. So that really helped. So I came across on that. And then I think it was a relatively fast way to move forward, not having to have this on your local machine, that you can just have a VM on the Windows 2019 server, use an RDP, and kind of like go your way through that. Do a git checkout on the go there and try to get the container to build in that environment first. And then when we gained more experience on how it will actually first build and then run, then we were able to move forward and do the actual pipelines. And after that, then when we hit another problem, that okay, Docker in Windows is not happening, so we need to do the VM way and TCP socket things. But now it's quite in a stable state, and we are able to deploy And also that it is very much possible to just have an AKS cluster with both a Linux node pool with Linux host and then a Windows node pool for the Windows payloads, and just use the annotations to to drive them into those specific node pools. I'm a little bit lost on the AKS jargon on that, so forgive me for that. But anyway, there's ways to separate those payloads into the different node pools, and that is very much working. Also, quite recently, we upgraded our architecture so that we took into use the AGIC, so the Application Gateway Ingress Controller, that just came out as GA maybe a couple of months ago. I'm not sure about the exact dates. There's also a little bit less or a little bit the information is not there regarding that, so it's really hard to find any information regarding any problematic situations that you might encounter. So so it was, for example, not so evident for the DevOps team to figure out how to, of course, because Argo CI has the sensors from the Git repositories to have a webhook when the new commit comes in. And that's a post request, that how to configure and annotate the post request from AGIC to the actual service that is going to expect that. But kind of we were able to run both Argo and the runtime in AKS with AGIC, which is a good thing because it reduces a lot of complexity from the architecture when you can use AGIC on top of things. And of course, when the dev environment and part of the QA environments need to be firewalled, we can just use WAF to easily configure the firewall rules inside the application gateway itself. So it becomes really easy task to do the firewall updates and stuff as well. Yeah, but in case you want any kind of further details and or want to contact me regarding this exercise, please do. You can find me on the FAUC Slack and Rintsi on Twitter at least. So give me a shout out if you are struggling with the same things. For me, this was a really eye-opening exercise in that way that I hadn't used the quite a lot of the tools that we have ended up using now during this project, and those are quite on the bleeding edge side. For example, the AGIC stuff that we were able to do. But yeah, this was a little bit on the shorter side of the tips and tricks, and I hope that there was some nuggets of information that you could find useful in your work. And yeah, thanks very much and stay safe. Bye. Oh, I just from the earpiece that there was some questions.